A week before our wedding, my fiance told me his female best friend confessed she's in love with him. All right, so here's how things started going downhill in my marriage. And honestly, it's kind of crazy how everything seemed fine at first. I'm 27F, and I've been with my husband Matt, who's 30, for 3 years. We got married 5 months ago, and up until right before the wedding, I thought everything was perfect. We had no major issues or drama, just the usual stuff every couple deals with, like who's going to do the dishes or what to watch on Netflix. Nothing serious. Anyway, there's this woman, Sarah. She's been Matt's best friend since high school, and yeah, I knew about her from the beginning. He was always open about their friendship, and I didn't really see a problem with it at first. I mean, she had a long-term boyfriend, so it never crossed my mind that she could be a threat. I even met her a bunch of times, and we all hung out together pretty often. I honestly thought Sarah and I got along well. She was nice enough, I guess, and I didn't get any weird vibes from her. I figured she was just one of those people who has a close friendship with a guy, and it's totally platonic. But then, about a week before our wedding, things got real weird. It was a regular weeknight, and Matt and I were just chilling at home. I think we were talking about wedding plans or something, and then suddenly, Matt gets all serious. Like, he's got this look on his face, and I could tell something was bothering him. I asked him what was up, and he says, "We need to talk." You know that feeling when someone says that and your stomach just drops? Yeah, that's how I felt. I thought maybe he was having cold feet or something. So we sit down and he's like, "There's something I've been meaning to tell you, and I don't want you to freak out." That's always a great way to start a conversation, right? My brain immediately goes into overdrive, thinking of all the worst case scenarios. But nothing could have prepared me for what he said next. He goes, "Sarah told me she's in love with me." I honestly thought I didn't hear him right. I was like, "Wait, what?" He repeated it, and I just sat there stunned. Like, what do you even say to that? My heart was racing, and I could feel my face getting hot. This woman, who I thought was just his friend, straight up told him she's in love with him. I didn't even know how to process it at first. Matt kept talking, explaining the whole situation while I sat there in shock. Apparently, Sarah had told him this just a few days ago. She said she couldn't keep it a secret anymore and that she had been in love with him for years. And get this, she had broken up with her boyfriend of 6 years because of her feelings for Matt. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could I have been so blind to this? I mean, we were literally about to get married and she drops this bomb on him. It was like something out of a bad movie. I started asking him a million questions like, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" And "What did you say to her?" Because, let's be real, I needed to know exactly how he handled this. The last thing I wanted was for him to have led her on in any way. Matt told me that he shut her down immediately, saying that he was in love with me and that he was going to marry me. End of story. He made it clear to her that nothing was going to happen between them. He even said he felt sorry for her, which kind of made me mad, honestly. Like, why would you feel sorry for someone who just tried to mess up your relationship? As he's telling me all this, I started getting this really weird feeling. Not jealousy exactly, but more like I'd been blindsided. Here I was, thinking I had nothing to worry about with Sarah, and the whole time she was secretly in love with my husband. It just felt wrong. I mean, how long had she been pretending to be my friend while she was really just waiting for her chance with Matt? I asked him what he planned to do about it, and he said that he thought we should cut her off completely. He didn't want to risk anything, and he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, which I appreciated. But part of me couldn't help but wonder if he was really telling me everything. Like, was this really the first time she'd made a move on him, or had there been other moments I didn't know about? We decided to uninvite her from the wedding. I mean, there was no way I was going to have her there after what she did. It was awkward because some of our friends knew her and would probably ask questions, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to let her ruin our big day. Matt sent her a message letting her know that it was best if she didn't come, and that was that. Or so I thought. The days leading up to the wedding were kind of tense. I kept replaying the whole thing in my head, trying to figure out if I missed any signs or if Matt had ever said or done anything that could have encouraged her. But every time I brought it up, he reassured me that nothing had ever happened between them and that he only saw her as a friend. I wanted to believe him, and for the most part, I did. But there was still this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that wouldn't go away. I tried to focus on the wedding, though, and for the most part, it went off without a hitch. Sarah was out of the picture, and everything seemed fine again. We got married, went on our honeymoon, and life started to feel normal. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd really heard the last of her. Looking back, maybe I should have pushed harder to figure out what was really going on. But at the time, I just wanted to move on and put the whole thing behind us. Little did I know things were far from over. A few months later, and everything seemed fine again. Normal married life, work, weekends together, stuff like that. Honestly, I thought the whole Sarah situation was behind us. I mean, we uninvited her to the wedding and we hadn't heard from her since, so I figured we'd moved on. Then, Matt's birthday came around. He didn't want anything too crazy, just a dinner with family and some close friends. Nothing big, just a chill evening at this restaurant we like. I was totally on board with that. We invited about 10 people, some of his family, a couple of our mutual friends, and it was supposed to be this nice, low-key birthday thing. The dinner started off pretty great. Everyone was having a good time, and the mood was light. I remember sitting there, looking at Matt, thinking how glad I was that we were past all the wedding drama. We're all eating, laughing, talking, you know how it goes, when out of nowhere, someone walks into the restaurant. And who is it? Sarah. Yeah, Sarah. The same Sarah who we'd cut off months ago. At first, I didn't even notice her. We were deep into some conversation about one of our friends' new job, and I was kind of zoned out, just enjoying the night. But then I hear this voice say, "Oh, hey, I didn't mean to intrude. I was just grabbing dinner alone and saw you guys here." And I swear my stomach dropped. I look up, and there she is, standing at our table like it's no big deal. I didn't know what to do, I just froze. Matt looked surprised too, but not in the way I expected. He wasn't, like, shocked or annoyed. He actually smiled at her, like he was happy to see her or something, and that really threw me off. Sarah stood there, acting all innocent, like she just happened to be in the same restaurant on Matt's birthday. What are the chances, right? She wished Matt a happy birthday, and I'm sitting there, waiting for him to say, "Thanks, but we're kind of in the middle of a family dinner." Like a normal person would do in that situation. But no. Instead, he looks at her and says, "Why don't you join us?" And I'm just sitting there, staring at him like, "Are you serious right now?" I couldn't believe it. This was the same woman who told him she was in love with him, who tried to get him to call off our wedding, and now he's inviting her to sit with us? I didn't even know what to say. I was too stunned to react at first. I glanced around the table, and no one else seemed to think it was weird. I mean, they all knew Sarah, but they didn't know the whole story, so maybe they just thought she was still a friend of ours. But I wasn't about to let this happen. I wasn't going to sit there and play nice while this woman, who had tried to sabotage my relationship, joined us for dinner like nothing had ever happened. So I stood up and I said, "You know what? You can have my seat." I didn't even look at Sarah when I said it. I just pushed my chair back and walked out of the restaurant. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I left, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to sit there and pretend everything was fine. My heart was racing as I walked outside, and I immediately texted a ride home. I figured Matt would follow me, maybe come after me to see if I was okay. I mean, I had just walked out of his birthday dinner, right? You'd think he'd be concerned or at least curious about why I left. But nope. I waited outside for a few minutes, half expecting him to come running after me, but he never did. So I got in the car and went home. I was fuming the whole ride back, replaying everything in my head. The way Sarah had just happened to show up at the restaurant, how Matt had invited her to join us without even thinking about how I would feel. It was like he didn't care at all. By the time I got home, I was still in shock, but mostly I was angry. Angry at Matt for being so oblivious, and angry at myself for not seeing this coming. Hours passed, and Matt still hadn't come home. I thought maybe he'd send me a text, check if I was all right, or apologize for what happened. But no, nothing. It was like he didn't even care that I just walked out of his birthday dinner. Finally, almost 2 hours later, the door opens and he walks in. The first thing out of his mouth, not, "Are you okay?" or "I'm sorry." No, he walks in and immediately starts arguing with me. He says I overreacted and acted immaturely by leaving. He actually had the nerve to say I ruined his birthday. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked him why he invited Sarah to join us after everything that had happened. I thought we were on the same page about cutting her off, but apparently I was wrong. He looked at me like I was crazy and said, "I was just being nice. It's been a long time since I saw her, and I didn't think she still had feelings for me." Didn't think she still had feelings for him? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he be so clueless? This woman literally broke up with her boyfriend to try to get with him, and he just assumes she's over it because some time has passed. I didn't even know how to respond to that. I told him that it didn't matter whether she still had feelings or not. The fact that he had invited her to join us, knowing what she had tried to do, was disrespectful to me. But he just kept saying that I was the one who made a big deal out of nothing, that I should have just stayed and been civil. Civil? With her? I was furious. He didn't get it. He didn't understand how hurt and disrespected I felt, and to be honest, I don't know if he ever will. That night, we barely spoke. He went to bed and I stayed up, just sitting there. trying to figure out where we go from here. All right, so here's where things started going downhill fast. After that whole mess at the restaurant, things between Matt and me were tense, to say the least. We barely talked after that night, and when we did, it was mostly awkward. I tried to just move past it, but honestly, it was hard. I couldn't stop thinking about how he had invited Sarah to join us, and the way he acted like I was the one making a big deal out of it. But I figured, okay, maybe this is just something we need to talk through. We had one argument, it was heated, and now we needed to sit down and really get on the same page. So a few days later, I tried to bring it up again, just to clear the air and talk about why it bothered me so much. I wasn't trying to start another fight, just wanted to explain where I was coming from and why I reacted the way I did. We're sitting on the couch, and I start by telling him that I still feel hurt by what happened. I explained that it wasn't just about Sarah showing up. It was about how he handled the whole situation. I needed him to understand that for me, it felt like a betrayal. Not just because of Sarah's history with him, but because he didn't even think about how I'd feel inviting her to sit down with us. I told him that I felt disrespected, like my feelings didn't matter in that moment. Matt just sat there nodding, but he didn't really say anything. He didn't even look that bothered by what I was saying. When I finished, he just kind of shrugged and said, "I don't know why you're still holding on to this. I already told you. I didn't think it was a big deal." That's when I started getting frustrated again. I was trying to be calm and explain my side, but it felt like he wasn't taking me seriously. So I asked him straight up, "Do you really not see why this upset me? Do you really think this is no big deal?" And what he said next, it was like a punch to the gut. He goes, "Honestly, I think you're overreacting. It was one dinner. I just wanted to be polite, and you made it into this huge thing. Sarah's not some villain. She was a friend, and she doesn't even have feelings for me anymore." Now, at that point, I'm fuming. I told him, "You don't know that? You don't know that she's over you. She literally broke up with her boyfriend because of you. How can you be so sure?" Matt sighed, and I could tell he was getting annoyed, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let him brush this off. So I kept pushing, telling him that he should have never invited her in the first place, and that, honestly, I was starting to feel like maybe he didn't cut her off as much as he said he did. Like, why was he so quick to act like everything was fine between them? That's when he dropped something on me that I wasn't expecting. He goes, "Well, yeah, we haven't talked much, but we did text a few times after the wedding. It wasn't a big deal. She just wanted to check in and make sure things were good between us." I swear I felt like I'd been slapped. "What do you mean you've been texting her?" I asked. "I thought we agreed to cut her off. Why would you keep talking to her after everything she did?" Matt acted like it wasn't a big deal. He said, "I didn't want there to be any bad blood, that's all. It's not like we're best friends again. It was just a few texts, nothing serious." But to me, it was serious. It was very serious. Because it wasn't just about the texts. It was about the fact that he had been hiding it from me. I thought we were on the same page, that we had both agreed to keep Sarah out of our lives, but now I was finding out that Matt had still been in contact with her behind my back. I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me? If it was no big deal, why didn't you say anything about texting her?" And of course, he didn't have a good answer for that. He just kind of shrugged again and said, "I didn't think it was worth mentioning. I didn't want to upset you." Well, mission not accomplished, because now I was more upset than ever. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about trust. If he could keep something like that from me, what else was he hiding? How was I supposed to trust him when he clearly didn't think it was important to tell me the truth? We ended up arguing for the rest of the night, and by the end of it, I was exhausted. I felt like I was banging my head against a wall, trying to get him to understand why this hurt so much. But he just wasn't getting it. To him, it was all just a misunderstanding. He kept saying that I was blowing things out of proportion, that I was making something out of nothing. But to me, it wasn't nothing. It was the fact that he had been dishonest with me, that he had gone behind my back and done exactly what we agreed not to do. I couldn't even look at him after that. I went to bed early, just to get away from him, and I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we got here. How did we go from being this happy, problem-free couple to this? It was like everything I thought I knew about our relationship had changed, and I didn't know how to deal with it. The next morning, things were awkward. We barely talked, and when we did, it was short and cold. I could feel this huge wall between us, and I didn't know how to break it down. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to at that point. All I knew was that the trust I had in Matt was shaken, and I didn't know how to fix it. And the worst part? Matt still didn't seem to understand why I was so upset. He kept acting like this was all just some big misunderstanding that I should get over, but I couldn't. I couldn't just get over it. because to me, it wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about our relationship and whether I could really trust him going forward. Update 1. All right, so after everything with the texting and all that, things between me and Matt just kept getting worse. It was like every day I was walking on eggshells around him. We barely spoke unless we had to. And even then, it felt forced. You know that feeling when you're around someone and it's just awkward? Yeah, that was us. I didn't know how to fix it, and honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to. Part of me was so angry that I didn't even want to deal with him anymore. But at the same time, we were married, right? We'd made these vows, and I felt like I had to at least try to make it work. So, after a few days of just avoiding each other, I decided to talk to him again. I figured we couldn't keep going like this forever. I sat him down one night, and I tried to be as calm as possible. I didn't want it to turn into another argument. I just wanted to talk like two adults. I told him, look, we need to figure this out. We can't keep living like this, barely talking to each other. I feel like there's a wall between us, and I don't know how to break it down. He didn't say much at first, just nodded and looked at the floor. So I kept going, telling him that we needed to rebuild trust if we were going to make this work. I told him how hurt I still was by everything that had happened, and how the whole texting thing made it even worse. I said, I just need to know that you're being honest with me, and right now, I don't feel that way. And finally, he looked up at me and said, I get it, I do. But I swear, there's nothing going on with Sarah. I haven't talked to her since that last time. I've been trying to give you space, but it feels like no matter what I do, it's not enough. That actually surprised me a bit. I hadn't really thought about how he was feeling in all this. I mean, yeah, I was mad and hurt, but I guess I didn't consider that he might be feeling lost too. So I softened up a bit and said, I'm not trying to push you away. I don't know how to trust you right now. You hid the texting from me, and it made me feel like there could be more. Matt sighed and said, I know I messed up by not telling you about the texts. I didn't think it would matter because in my mind, Sarah was out of the picture. I never thought it would blow up like this. I'm sorry for not being honest with you, but I'm telling you now, there's nothing else. I don't know what else I can say to prove that. I sat there for a second, just letting it sink in. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something still felt off. I didn't know if it was just me being paranoid or if there was really something he wasn't telling me. But I figured if we were going to move forward, I had to at least give him the benefit of the doubt. So I told him, okay, I'm willing to try to move past this, but you have to be honest with me from now on. No more hiding things, even if you think it's small. We have to be on the same page. He agreed. And for a minute, it felt like maybe we were making progress. I wasn't totally convinced that things were going to be fine, but it was at least a step in the right direction. But here's where it gets complicated again. A few days after that conversation, I was still feeling a little uneasy about the whole Sarah thing. I didn't want to keep bringing it up with Matt, so I decided to do something that, looking back, I probably shouldn't have. I went through his phone. Now, before you judge me, I know it's not the best move, but I needed to know for sure that he wasn't hiding anything else from me. He'd already lied about texting her before, so how was I supposed to just take his word for it now? I felt like I had no choice. No. So, when he was in the shower, I grabbed his phone and started scrolling through his messages. At first, I didn't see anything suspicious. It was mostly texts with his family and a few friends. But then I opened his Instagram DMs, and that's where I saw it. A message from Sarah. It wasn't anything crazy, just her asking how he was doing and if he wanted to grab coffee sometime. But the date on the message? It was from after our last fight, after he promised he wasn't talking to her anymore. And the worst part? He had responded. He didn't say much, just something like, I'm good, just busy with work. But that was enough for me. He'd lied again. He was still talking to her, and he didn't even bother to tell me. I couldn't believe it. After everything we'd been through, after all the promises he made, he was still talking to her behind my back. I didn't know what to do. I felt this wave of anger and betrayal wash over me. I just stood there staring at his phone, not even sure how to react. Should I confront him right away? Should I wait and see if he mentions it himself? My mind was racing, and I felt like I was about to explode. When he came out of the shower, I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there, trying to keep my cool. But I couldn't hold it in for long. I turned to him and said, So when were you going to tell me that Sarah messaged you again? His face went pale. He knew he was caught. He tried to stammer out some excuse, but I wasn't having it. I threw his phone at him and said, I saw the messages. You told me you weren't talking to her anymore. You lied to me again. He tried to defend himself, saying it was just one message and that he didn't even plan on meeting up with her. But I didn't care. The fact that he hid it from me again was all I needed to know. I stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I didn't even want to look at him. How could he keep doing this? How could he keep betraying my trust over and over again? That night I slept in the guest room, and for the first time since we got married, I wasn't sure if we were going to make it. Update 2. So, after that whole thing with the Instagram messages, I was done. Like, mentally done. I didn't know what to believe anymore, and I honestly didn't even want to deal with Matt at that point. We didn't talk for a couple of days after that blow-up. I was staying in the guest room and he was in the bedroom, and it was like we were two strangers living in the same house. It was awkward, but honestly, I didn't care. I needed space to figure out what the hell I was going to do. I knew we couldn't just keep living like this, but I didn't know if I was ready to make any big decisions yet. Part of me was still hoping Matt would come to his senses, admit that he messed up again, and actually try to fix things. But every time I thought about those messages, I just got angrier. It wasn't about Sarah anymore. It was about the lying, the constant sneaking around, the hiding stuff from me. How was I supposed to stay in a marriage where I couldn't even trust my husband? Anyway, a few days after the fight, Matt finally came to me and said we needed to talk. I'd been waiting for this, but I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I sat down on the couch and he sat across from me, looking like he didn't even know where to start. We were both quiet for a minute, and then he finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I've been screwing up. I didn't think the messages were a big deal, but clearly they were to you. I should have told you." I wanted to believe he was being genuine, but at this point, words didn't mean much to me. He'd apologized before and then gone right back to doing the same thing. So I asked him, "Why didn't you tell me? If it wasn't a big deal, why not just be upfront about it? You knew how I felt about you talking to her." He paused for a second, like he was trying to come up with the right thing to say, but I could see he was struggling. Finally, he said, "I didn't want to upset you again. I thought if I just didn't mention it, we could avoid another fight." That's when I lost it. I stood up and said, "That's exactly the problem, Matt. You're trying to avoid fights by hiding things from me, but that just makes everything worse. If you had just told me about the messages, maybe I would have been upset for a minute, but at least I wouldn't feel like you're constantly lying to me. I can't trust you when you keep doing this." He looked shocked, like he didn't realize how deep the issue really went for me. And maybe he didn't. Maybe he thought this was all just about Sarah, but it wasn't. It was about trust. It was about the fact that I couldn't count on him to be honest with me. And for a marriage, that's pretty much the most important thing, right? Without trust, what do you even have? We went back and forth for a while, him apologizing and me telling him it wasn't enough. I wasn't yelling or anything, but I was just laying it all out there. I told him I didn't know if I could keep doing this, that I needed to feel like he actually cared about fixing things, not just saying sorry and moving on. Matt kept saying he was sorry and that he didn't want to lose me, but at the same time, I didn't feel like he was really getting it. It was like he thought saying sorry would make everything magically go back to normal. But for me, it wasn't that easy. Things weren't just going to be okay because he apologized. There was damage done, and I didn't know if we could fix it. After a while, I just sat back down and said, "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Matt. I love you, but I can't keep living like this. I can't keep wondering if you're hiding something from me. It's exhausting." He didn't say anything for a minute, and I could see the gears turning in his head. I think he finally started to realize how serious I was. I wasn't just mad, I was on the edge of being done. He reached out for my hand, but I pulled away. Not to be mean, but because I wasn't ready to just forgive him yet. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this," he said. "I know I've been messing up, but I don't want to lose you. I'll stop talking to Sarah for good. I'll do anything. I just want us to be okay." It was weird because part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this time, he was serious. But the other part of me was tired. Tired of the lies, the drama, the constant feeling of betrayal. I didn't know if I had it in me to keep fighting for this marriage when I was the only one who seemed to care about the trust part. I told him, "I don't know if that's enough. It's not just about Sarah, Matt. It's about the fact that you didn't think it was important to be honest with me, and I don't know how we fix that." He tried to argue that he'd been honest most of the time, and that he didn't mean to hurt me, but honestly, I wasn't in the mood to hear excuses anymore. I told him, "It's not about what you meant to do, it's about what you did. You lied to me, and you kept lying even when you knew it hurt me. How am I supposed to trust you after that?" We sat there in silence for a while after that. Neither of us knew what to say. I think we were both just trying to process everything. Eventually, I got up and said, "I need some time to think. I don't know if I can forgive this right now." He didn't try to stop me. He just nodded and said, Take whatever time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. I walked out of the room and went back to the guest room where I'd been staying. I sat on the bed and just stared at the wall, thinking about everything that had happened. Part of me wanted to believe we could fix this, that we could get back to where we were before all the lies. But another part of me wasn't so sure. I didn't know if I could ever fully trust Matt again. And honestly, without trust, what's the point?